It just makes impossible.
That's
So
right.
Mary Pat, you're recording this. You have a system there
Mhm.
for recording? Okay, so the school. Terry Connor. I am Jill Lewis Spector. I'm a board member of the League of Women Voters of Florida and chair of Sarasota's League's Education Action Team, which is sponsoring tonight's event. Tonight's event, as you just heard, is being recorded. We want to thank Superintendent Connor for spending the evening with us. This has been such a trying time, and I'm sure he has lots of numbers to work with back in his office, but he's agreed to spend an hour with us talking to us about what's going on with the budget and how he's managing it. I am just so impressed. Thank you. The past several months have been particularly challenging for district public schools. They've seen long delayed promised federal dollars and inadequate state dollars for our public schools. But Sarasota is fortunate to have a creative problem solver as our school superintendent. We've witnessed Superintendent Terry Connor's resolve under pressure and his ability to articulate a clear vision for our schools, focusing on improving student achievement and fostering organizational excellence. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Terry, he is originally from Jacksonville and has experienced Florida's public education system firsthand. He has held nearly every position within K-12 education, from middle school science teacher to deputy superintendent in some of the country's largest school districts. As a first-generation college graduate, Terry understands the transformative power of opportunity through education. He earned his degrees from the University of North Florida and Nova Southeastern University. He also holds certifications in several content areas, school administration, and educational leadership. Additionally, he has completed executive leadership training at both the National Institute for School Leadership and the University of Florida's L.A. Stinger Center. Terry is known for his genuine and results-driven leadership style. Under his direction, Sarasota County schools have achieved record-high graduation rates and high rankings in third-grade literacy. He manages a budget of $1.5 billion and is currently overseeing the construction and opening of 2 new schools. In 2025, he was recognized as the National School Public Relations Association Superintendent to Watch. Terry bases every decision on one guiding principle: ensuring success for every student every day. So let's begin our conversation with Superintendent Connor. The format for our conversation will be that Superintendent Connor will first update us on what's happening with the district's budget for the coming school year, and we will have time for Q&A at the end of his presentation. So please put your questions in the chat. Nancy Morrison, Sarasota League board member and member of our Education Action Team, will monitor your questions. Thank you. I have put my email address in the chat in case you have any questions or are interested in joining our team. So why don't we begin? Carrie, I have to ask you, this is such a trying time. How are you managing the pressure? What current financial pressures are you experiencing? And is it any different now than it's been before?
Well, thank you for that, Dr. Lewis Spector. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. I got to tell you, it has been the last 7 weeks have been a very challenging time, but it's also an exciting time. And I don't ever want to pass over the opportunity to talk about some of those positive things that are occurring, even as of late as today, where we have offered over 400 teachers the opportunity to participate in a rigorous professional learning opportunity called Math for All. We had 400 teachers at Booker High School that launched with a partnership with Carnegie Learning to really create some rigorous, relevant, engaging math lessons as we move into the new year. And our summer's really been full with that. We've had over 1,000 teachers that have participated, whether it be through our Literacy for All initiatives, our Student Services Institute, as well as our Leadership Institute. So lots are happening, lots of positive things too. And even when you talk about the finances of the school district in Sarasota, there's a really good foundation here. We are so fortunate to have a community that is backing education, that is supporting us 100% with the referendum. That has really helped us to maintain a strong fiscal stability here. When you talk about an over a 12% fund balance, when you talk about the compensation that we're able to offer our employees, not only a leader here in the state, but we've done an analysis. We are a leader in the nation here in Sarasota County when it comes to that. And so all of those things are just great celebrations. You mentioned some of the data around the graduation rates that we're continuing to push forward. So I don't want to lose the fact that we are in some great positive momentum here in this district. And it's my job, and I guess the stress of the last few weeks have really been to make sure that we secure that momentum, move forward through some of these challenges. And so the financial challenges we face, I mean, largely, let's just all face it, we all know it, that the educational landscape is changing rapidly across the nation, especially in Florida. Florida has kind of been one of the first out of a few states to really expand the Florida Empowerment Scholarship, the voucher system that is obviously is really disrupting the normal way of school funding. So those are things that we're facing. The fact that our state legislature went way beyond the deadline, well, they have to pass the budget by July 1st. Let's just say that. And they went all the way to the deadline, just about it, before we knew exactly what that funding was going to be. That was a challenge for us in just making the appropriate plannings. Making decisions with incomplete information was a big challenge for us over the summer. When you talk about the operational cost, in your personal households, everything is going up: food, fuel, utilities, medical insurance. All of those things we're not immune to, and we feel it in the school district tremendously. And so when you talk about those costs, when you talk about the minuscule education rise because it's not keeping up with the pace of inflation, when you talk about the Florida Empowerment Scholarship, all of these things combined create really some major challenge for us because fixed costs are still there. If we have students who leave us, whether it's, let's say, 20% of the students who leave us for an educational scholarship, we don't get a 20% deduction on our electric bill. We don't get to cut the security by 20%. We have transportation, we have to have school buses. We can't cut 20% of the bus, right? And so fixed costs are still there, and that's creating some challenges for us in prioritizing. And so that's been the thrust of what we've been working through in this budget cycle. The positive is we are fiscally sound, we are stable. I'm proud to say that. But the challenges are absolutely there. So I can go through specifically what some of those challenges are, but I'll stop just in case you wanted to ask another question there, Miss Dr. Spector.
Yeah, so I know you're not alone with the challenges. What are you hearing from the staff? What are you hearing from the teachers? And what kind of support are you able to give them as everybody's dealing with this?
Well, first off, it's reassurance, right? The reassurance that we're all in this together and we're all making decisions. I believe we're prioritizing the right things. We're looking at the classroom, the four walls of the classroom, and protecting that as best we can. And what I mean by that is we're not trying to blow up class sizes where teachers are struggling or cut supports that are going to really help our students learn. Reading, math, science, social studies. We're looking at that core mission of what we're doing is in education to ensure that that is protected in the classroom. So for us, we've really been clear in sending out communication along the way to our staff throughout the summer. We did a couple of things that have been not traditional, but I really believe has set us up for success because we were heading down this road of potential cuts because we're looking at student enrollment and it's flatlined here in Sarasota for a variety of reasons, right? We know that the cost of living is going up. We know that the growth in the county is stagnant. It's booming in some places, not in others. We see the impacts of the Florida Empowerment Scholarship as well. So that has created a dynamic here in the last few years where not only are we seeing flatlining of enrollment, but then if students do leave our district managed schools to attend a charter, then we're seeing an actual decline in enrollment, even if the overall number stays the same. So those are challenges that then we've got to make decisions about what are we prioritizing, because when you look at our budget, 80% of our budget is people. Education is a people business. And so we at some point you can cut everything outside of staff, but you still eventually are going to have to start touching the people and prioritizing those positions at some point when you're making these adjustments. And so we looked outside of the classroom. So those were non-rostered FTE positions, is what we started with. Those are things that were you think of a literacy coach, you think of administration, you think of those positions that aren't directly tied to students in the classroom as your first option. So we laid that out and we really prioritize based on how long historically have some of these positions been in place. Because with ESSER just a few years ago, we had an influx of funding from the federal government for COVID relief, and that's the ESSER dollars. And when the ESSER dollars came in, honestly, it was a challenge to spend that money for many districts because it was a big influx, but people were scared to go to work. People were not doing after school programming. All the things that the money was intended for became a challenge to actually spend the money because the people were not necessarily filling the roles because of, it could be health, it could be a variety of reasons. And so Sarasota decided to invest in about 182 positions at that time, obviously knowing and planning that at some point those positions are going to have to go away. They were built on what we call the soft money, on the ESSER dollars. We knew it wasn't going to recur forever. And so things like school-wide behavior coaches were the first things we looked at. Okay. It's not to discredit the value of the roles. I want to be clear about that. Every role that was added to the budget, either through ESSER dollars or through other funding sources or with the just general funding, I know at some point when the decision was made to put those positions in place, there was value, there was purpose, and there was a reason to do that. But when you now become into these challenges where revenue is not keeping up with the expenditures and the cost, you have to look at those things. And that's where we started, was non-rostered FTE positions like school-wide behavior coaches. Formulas had been changed for the better when we had the revenue. They reduced the number of student to counselor ratios. We reduced the number of student to ESE resource teachers. All of those things were very good priorities that we believe should happen. But then when you run into the issue of revenue versus expenditures, we had to swing back some of that. And so we looked at things like counselor positions that were added just recently, and so we were not necessarily going back and cutting from where we historically had been, but where we had just recently pivoted and maybe reduced those ratios the last year or two, we had to swing back and put them back where they were maybe 3 years ago. So those were the types of decisions where we've been making. And we made the decision over the summer to do two staffing processes. And that was the non-traditional thing, because most school districts will do all of that adjusting in the fall after students start. And it can be disruptive, right? School starts, you wait to see how many, we always say this, the cheeks in the seat. We want to see how many kids show up to school so we know exactly what schools are projected lower than they have lower enrollment than projected, what schools may have higher, and then you go through that surplusing process and you shift your teachers to match the student need. That can be a disruptive process, and it happens every year in school districts. We saw this coming as, okay, we know we're going to have several positions eliminated, and we have these vacancies. Let's go ahead and let's have a staffing process over the summer that allows these staff that are going to be surplus to find a position over the summer, so that when school starts, the vacancies are filled. There's going to be less movement happening after the 5-day count when we actually see who rolls in. And that has been very, very, very helpful for us. I think we are avoiding a massive disruption, and we're going to try to minimize that. It's still going to happen when you get to the 5th-day count. You're still going to have adjusting just based on enrollment and where kids land. But I think we did a great job in terms of minimizing that disruption as much as possible. So for our people, I think for our leaders and for the people who are impacted, I think we did a good job of getting that taken care of over the summer, and having the confidence of knowing where you're going to be, where you're going to start your year, getting settled in, and having a good start. So overall, I think our staff, while this is a very challenging time, um, I hope they can understand that non-traditional action really is the benefit to our school district and for them as well.
Thank you for that. Nancy, do we have any questions in the chat? You're muted.
Deb Hayes' question was in regard to the same subject, and that was administrative costs. And I think that she pretty much got her answer. I guess the one phrase she used was if you just get rid of that overpaid administration. She's just quoting what people might be saying. Aside from numbers of administration, was there any change in the salaries or what you're able to pay administratively for
Yeah,
certain positions?
that is a great question, and that's a common one, right? The one thing that we went into this process is to make sure that this burden wasn't just on the backs of the schools, right? It has to be a shared, equitable reduction. We should all feel a little bit of the pinch, right? Here's the bottom line, and when you have to look at this in percentage wise, because I know a lot of people can maybe have an idea that, oh, administration is just the fat cat sitting up in the bill in the ivory tower, not doing much, right? But there are many state requirements. There are a lot of job responsibilities that have to happen at the district level. Having said that, though, we took that and wanted to make sure that the cuts and reductions were more percentage proportionately than were happening at schools. So here's the facts, though. I have 150-ish administrators that are non-school based, that are at the district. I have just an instructional staff, not talking about classified or administrators at the schools, just teachers and counselors and instructional certified. There are 3,000 of those. So when you're talking about cuts, making a 15 or a 10, let's say we made a 10% cut at the district level, which is what we did. Those 15 administrators of the 150, obviously, if I cut 4% of 3,000, that's going to be much more in numbers, right? But that's where the workforce is. So we at the school level, we cut across administrative, school-based, classified, and instructional. We cut roughly about a 4% across all those areas. At the district level, which is mainly administrators and a lot of classified, we cut higher percentage. So at classified, it was about 6%. At administration, it was 10%. So we did it from a proportionate, but you may say, well, 10% is it's not a lot of raw people, right? Numbers versus 4% of 3,000. That's true. But ultimately, that's where all the workforce is. So we feel like we did our fair share of looking at roles and responsibilities at the school district, at the district level, to ensure that can we absorb it? Can we reduce any redundancies? Can we offload those responsibilities to another person? And we did a good job in filling those. Now, the salary piece, I think you asked a question about that. I get a lot of feedback about, oh, you have a lot of chiefs at the district level. I want to be clear that most of those chiefs were just retitled positions that already existed. We had positions like assistant superintendent, chief academic officer. All right, those were the same positions. We had we've always had a chief financial officer. We had an executive director of human resources that we just retitled to chief of human capital. And what is a misnomer is that all the people that came in recently in the last 2 years since I've been there are somehow making more money than the previous people that were in the jobs. That is not accurate. Every one of those people, as much as $40,000 differences in salaries, have all come in lower than the people who served in those roles prior to that. And that can actually, I have a table of that in our FAQ. We did the research because I heard that quite often that, oh, Mr. Connor brought in all these chiefs and they're all getting these really fat salaries and, double what the previous administrators has got. And so I really wanted to clear the air with that. So if you look at our FAQ, we just released that on our website, and I can make sure you have that information before we get off the call. Just to, you can see where those numbers lie.
Okay. I think we have some more questions in the chat.
Yes, Deb Griffin wanted to know what the impact of deportations are going to be on our expected enrollment.
That's interesting. We don't have data on knowing. The only thing that we capture as a school district is that would even be close to knowing whether a student was not, was illegal or not a citizen. Would be probably our ELL population, but that doesn't tell you. So I honestly I can't answer that question unless I had specific data on who was deported. And you know, honestly, I think if that were to happen, I don't think we get anything from any organization that would tell us a kid has been deported. They would just not show up to school. And we wouldn't know the reason why that was. So that's a very difficult question to answer because we don't get the data or have the information to know the reason why a student would leave us for deportation. We don't talk to agencies. We won't talk to ICE or anybody. They don't provide any information around that.
So in that regard, this past school year, when all the deportations started, do you know if there was a decline in the enrollment of the ELL, English Language Learner kids? Because we do know from the press that kids were being kept home. Parents were afraid. I don't know if that's happened in Sarasota schools at all, but I think if we had
Well,
data on attendance in the ELL classes, that might give some indication.
that's exactly right. So we did look at data in terms of attendance rates to know were we seeing, and again, the only way we would even have an inkling is maybe using some of the ELL data to kind of guide us. We don't know just because a student is an ELL student doesn't mean they're an illegal student, right? And so again, it's a kind of a shot in the dark, but we did monitor that just to kind of see. And there was a period there, especially around January-ish or whatever, that we saw some dips in attendance. We saw that bounce back. And in terms of whether we have less ELLs, I can give a better picture at the 5-day count. It'll be interesting to know if we have a significant more or less or no change at all with the ELL population. And I've already got our teams looking at that. I think that's interesting data just in general to know. And it's not necessarily related to deportations, but what are we seeing in terms of students we need to serve? I look at ELL as a special population that we got to ensure we have the right resources. So we do care about those enrollments, so we know that we're having the right resources in front of students.
Okay, thank you. I'll ask a question about block grants. my understanding is that President Trump plans to enact block grants the next school year, and will be consolidating a number of programs, mostly within IDEA, a lot of the title programs. What are you anticipating, and how is the district planning to address that? Have you discussed that at all?
Well, we're not really getting a lot of details around that. We're hearing a lot about the potential of block grants that would be coming to the state, and then that's where, once it gets to the state, then that's where the questions lie, and we haven't gotten clarity yet because there haven't been, I guess, solid decisions, at least, that have been released to us around to the superintendents around that. So the block grants will really be contingent upon any strings or criteria that the state will then place on school districts for access to those funds. And that's the big question mark right now. We don't know exactly how the state, giving those block grants, will then distribute the money to the school districts. I think the intent, they say, is to be, less bureaucratic. And I will say the federal grants are very, very, very bureaucratic. I have to have a cadre of staff to manage those. And so it'll be interesting to see if that changes at all in terms of how it's administered, and then what criteria we would have. So I wish I had a better answer, but it's still, to me, very unclear as to how that looks for our school districts.
Okay, thank you. So Nancy, what other questions do we have?
Yeah, Robin Williams had a couple of questions. Some of the first one may have been answered to some extent already. The first one was, how are class size, course offerings, and counselor load going to be affected?
Very, very good question. Thank you. I would tell you that class size is where we are an high performing school district. That's a designation that the state provides to, there are only 10 school districts in Florida that is considered a high performing school district. You have to have an A for a certain amount of years. You have to be financially, stable, and you have to have your class size met at the school-wide average. And when I say school-wide averages, there could be classes that may be over the class size limit. Let's say at third grade, the limit is 18. You may have a class that's 19 or maybe even 20, but overall for that grade band, K through 3, your average is 18 or under. And so that's what school-wide average. There's an average for K3, 18, 4 through 8 is 22, and 9 through 12 is 25. So we will be meeting those averages across our schools. We do not intend to blow up our class sizes above the school-wide averages, because we love our designation and we want to maintain that, and we want to make sure that our teachers are supported and they're not stressed by having really large classrooms and not be able to do their job effectively. In terms of there was another part of your question.
Course offerings and counselor load.
Yeah, so the course offerings are still very strong. One of the things that Sarasota County, our delegation, heard us. We were very loud. Our parents did a great job, really advocating for the maintaining the add-on FTE that is generated when students are taking ACE, IB, dual enrollment courses, and the funding that goes with that. There was a potential to cut that by 50%. We advocated very strongly. We were a leader in our county on that issue, and they kept it intact. They did create a categorical for it, so they changed some things, and they are being more stringent on monitoring and reporting how those dollars are spent, which I think is fine. I think they should hold school districts accountable. If they're going to give us the add-on FTE, tell us we need to be able to report how we're using it. That money is staying 100% intact. So those course offerings are not going to be effective. And the beauty of our 1 mil referendum, which is totally going to remain fully committed to what voters voted on, that ballot language said art, music, technology, all of the things and criteria is fully intact, and we want to make sure that that commitment stays at the forefront because that's what the community voted on. And so our course offerings, I do not see an impact in that. Where you may see some things is based on student enrollment. If student enrollment doesn't generate the need for a course, let's just say we have, I'm just going to make one up. We have a one-off science course. Maybe it's a marine science course at a high school, and we just only have interest for 3 kids. We may have to collapse that course, and those kids would have to maybe select a different science. That's normal. That's what we do every year. It's all students drive the demand for the courses, and then we match teacher certification for that. So I feel very confident that course offerings are there and will not be impacted in any way. But in terms of counselor ratios, we were fortunate in the last year or two, and I know I got a couple of board members who were here before I got here on the call, but I know the counselor ratio, I think right before I got here, there was a decision to add roughly 10 or plus counselors to bring those ratios down. And that was used, honestly, a lot of that was paid for through some of the ESSER funding that was not going to sustain for a while. And so we had to pull back and return back to the original counselor ratios that we had, which is about 1 to 400 or 1 to 450 is where we are in high school and middle school. And then we're about 1 to 700 at the elementary school. So yes, we did swing back a little bit, but nothing that the school district hasn't experienced before.
And Robin's second half of the question was, she wanted to know if what support we are providing ELL kids, many of whose families are now living in fear.
Yeah, so we have, well, in terms of the student support, so we have academic support and then obviously the student services report, right? If we're talking about the emotional well-being of the student, and I think that's kind of where the question may be leaning to, we have a cadre of support that either at the school level and at the district level that we can deploy to help there. And we have several interagency agreements. I mean, I don't even remember the last count of all the interagency agreements that we have, community partnerships to work with students who are in need. And so we can pull those levers as needed. Our school counselors are trained, our district staff are trained to know what resources they need to match for the need of the student. And so we're always working with our interagency partners as well as our trained experts on hand. We've got mental health certified counselors right on campuses that we can pull support on. And then, of course, every one of our teachers are youth mental health trained, so they have the tools and resources to help as well.
Great.
You ready for another one?
Yeah, sure.
Lindsay DeAugustino wanted clarification on knowing if the district is educating a student the entire year. She wanted to know if the state will not send funding for that student if that child's parent applied for a voucher or scholarship. Is that accurate? And if so, are there options the district can explore to recoup that state funding?
Well, we're actively on that one right now, and that's been my mantra. So I really appreciate that question because that's the one that I've been speaking about a lot lately to a lot of different audiences. I'm okay with school choice. I think putting the power in parents' hands to choose the best educational option for their child is the right thing to do. And so if they feel that this option's better than another, they should have the means and the ability to do that. What I don't think is how we're implementing the program here in Florida currently. There's flaws that need to be worked out. They need to be worked out, and it shouldn't be at the detriment of the funding to traditional public schools. And I've been I'll tell the legislature, I'll tell anybody who will listen, you need to get feedback from those who are practitioners, us who are working day in, day out, about the impacts of having a system that is currently flawed. So we just got to work on that to get the funding mechanisms in place that do not to this point of this question, we've got double counting of students right now, where I've educated 250 students in our district managed schools, but they applied for a scholarship. And now the state's saying, well, they applied for the scholarship. They've been funded for that. We're not going to fund the school district for educating them because they don't have the money to do both. They'll go bankrupt if they did that, right? This is happening across all school districts. This is over a $200 million problem across the state right now. And so that's not right. We shouldn't take the brunt of the mistake or the botched system. That needs to be fixed. So we've been advocating really strongly. Our board has, in its last legislative platform, and maybe even in the future as we work on our next one, we believe that the FES scholarship program needs to be its own district. It needs to be separated out. It needs to be tracked just like Florida Virtual School, and not muddied up in our budget, creating this problem. And so we're advocating really strongly. And we do know that we're getting some traction with legislatures. Hopefully we can get that ball moving.
Yeah, I guess I need to speak to a couple of things that you mentioned in terms of the voucher schools. They're not accountable at all. And in the past legislative session, there was a bill that would have made them a little more accountable. And there was also laid out some very specific deadlines for Step Up for Students that collects the money from the state and gives out the vouchers. That bill failed. So there isn't that willingness on the part of the legislature to address this situation. I know that at not the past school board meeting, but the one before, the board talked about going to Tallahassee as a group and really fighting, doing some advocacy there. And I don't know if you've made any plans for that, but I really hope that happens. The other thing I want to mention is that you talked about, you think competition is good. We think it's good, but there isn't enough known about all the great stuff that the district schools are doing. And another organization that a lot of people here know about, Public Education Network Sarasota, which is relatively new, is going to be holding a conference on November 8th. And we want everybody to come because its focus is on what's going on in the district schools. That's absolutely wonderful and that people need to know about. Because unless people know about that, you can't have competition. All you hear is what's going on in the private schools and how great they are. So we want to definitely work on elevating the district schools and letting more people know about that. But everything you've said it's important, and I think that we want to work with you. We'll talk about that some more, but we definitely want to work with you on making Sarasota district schools, which are already wonderful. We want the public to know about that. If you've got a kid in the school, you know about it. But not every taxpayer has a kid in the school, and not everybody who is moving into Sarasota and deciding to send the kid to private schools knows what's going on in the district schools. They're just being sold a bill of goods about the private schools. One other thing I want to mention is that I met with Senator Gruters, our senator, and talked about the need for private schools to have assessments like the district schools have, and for the information from those assessments to be made available to parents so that when they're making the choice, they know what they're choosing. They know how students in private schools are doing. So we don't have legislation for that yet, but there's another session starting soon, so maybe something will happen with that. Senator Gruters was interested in it, so we'll see.
No, those are great points. And I just want to add to that, with the expansion of the FES scholarship, I see an overheating, honestly, in the market of private schools. And I think the missing accountability piece is a problem, right? We talk about we need to have accountability for our schools, which we've done that. We have that for charter schools, which I still think, we kind of own it as a district, the charter school performance, even though our board or myself don't get to oversee the happenings, the financial expenditures, the day-to-day operations of our charter schools. It still counts in our school grade. I think, to me, I don't really like that because I have no say in what they do. And honestly, most of them are not performing at the level that we are as a district. And so that we've tried to partner with them, and we've had some success with some and not with others. But the private schools, no accountability, right? And as you're taking public tax dollars, I think the public deserves to have, to know how those schools are performing. I would put our schools up against just about any model of educational delivery that's going on, and the overheating of the market where we're seeing more private schools pop up. You're hearing about micro schools that are popping up. Those are things that worry me because, there is no accountability. Do you know what the educational quality is of those programs, and how do you track that? And is there a barometer that's fair, that across the board, a measuring stick that's really holding us all to the same standard? That doesn't exist right now. And so that's a thing that I'll continue to advocate as well, because if we're going to have competition, and I'm all about that, right? We want to be the best and deliver the best. We all need the same playing field. And right now we don't have the same playing field.
Exactly. I know some of our members were interested in testing, which is a very expensive thing for schools to be doing, and there's a lot of it. So they were wondering whether, given cutbacks that need to be made, there might be plans for reducing the amount of testing that's getting done in the schools.
Well, I think we've done a really good job of analyzing, what's required by the state, and then what we're requiring as a district. And then, we have a lot of control of what we're doing as a district, but we don't have control of what the state requires. I am a proponent of the progress monitoring assessments. I think in the last 3, maybe 4 years now, we have had progress monitoring going on at the state level. So in the school starts, within the first 3 weeks, we do a baseline progress monitoring 1 assessment window. Then at mid-year, we do 2. And then at the end of the year, 3 is what counts for, school grades and all of that. I think that's a good thing. And, we want that continuous progress monitoring. It helps guide what our decisions are as a district to help, keep improving instruction and student achievement. And then we also have other assessments that we do. We do some progress monitoring at the district level in between that, or maybe it's unit assessments. And we've done an analysis to really kind of streamline that so that there isn't this over testing happening. But we can only control what we're doing at the district. And I think every year we're getting a little better and a little more strategic about that, so that the testing is there. Now, the funding itself is not impacting that. We're still continuing to move forward with that, because you do have to teach, assess, and then use those results to drive your instruction. It's just a matter of not doing that too often where you're burning students out and teachers.
So Nancy, more questions from?
Yeah, and I just want to let everyone know, I'm just going in the order that the questions are in the chat. I'm really not picking and choosing. So I'm trying to be very democratic about this. Okay, Tina Lennon thanks you for providing the staff reduction percentages. She also would like to know how much less the state and federal funding is for this year compared to last year.
Yeah, so the state is interesting in terms of what so they've given us about a $5 million increase, but it's the cost that have gone up. The fact that the Florida retirement system contributions have gone up, our medical insurance is going up 11%. the enrollment is projected to go down because of, a variety of reasons, but including the FES scholarship. So it's all of the other factors that are actually outweighing that $5 million increase that we got from the state that is creating the gaps, right? The fact that we've got raises that we've invested in, a multitude of factors. And I outline this on our Inform community clarity page that, again, I'll make sure I share that link with you before we get off the call. It's about a 20-page explanation of the factors, the constraints that we're facing, and the actions that we're taking, along with a very robust FAQ that I think everyone on the call would be would enjoy reading, just to learn more about our current situation. I've been very transparent in this process to talk about every position that's been impacted, all of the factors with the data behind it, and then, what to expect. We're opening new schools. There's challenges with that. People say, why are you opening up a new school when your enrollment's declining? Well, first off, things have changed rapidly in the last 3 years. When the decision was made to build the school, you had people moving into Florida at, exponentially. You had South County and East County growing tremendously, and they still are, but not at the rates that they were. You didn't have universal voucher system at that time that was on the scene. So all of those really kind of change and shifted enrollment. But the schools needed to be built, and they're built out of a separate bucket that doesn't impact salaries or people. It's built out of our capital fund. And so those are good investments because eventually the growth is going to be there. It's going to return. It's helping with overcrowding at some of our schools like Lakeview and Ashton. And so those things need to be invested in now. And I know that can be hard to understand. It's like, well, your enrollment's going down as a district, but you're building new schools. And so we try to explain that and how that works in the narrative that I just talked about. But all of those costs to operate the school, once it's up and running, it's millions of dollars, and that's outpacing the revenue that we're receiving. And then there was another part of the question. You said state funding. Oh, the federal funding. The
yes.
federal funding freeze was for $2.5 million. We currently in Sarasota were affected on Title II, which is for professional learning, Title III for our ELLs, and Title IV, which is for the well-rounded education. And all of that amounted to about $2.5 million that was frozen, fortunately, for about a month period of time. But now that that's been released, we can move forward with its intent.
So we have another question, Nancy?
Yeah. Robin Williams also wanted to know, why are we moving to reduce student protections from harassment by removing categories of minority students to protect, when the data shows that spelling it out helps reduce harassment of those students? It is particularly peculiar at a time when the state statute passed in 2024 and during the special session has increased protections for students from anti-Semitism and has not removed other groups to be protected.
Yeah, thank you, Robin. I appreciate that. It definitely is, I know, confounding. This is really based on the legal advice that we've been given from our legal counsel around the potential threats of maybe losing federal funding if we're not in compliance with all of the assurances of these entitlement grants. We do get about $50 million total from the feds, whether it be through the school lunch program, Title I, all the other entitlement grants. And we've been advised that we could potentially put ourselves at risk if we don't revise the language in such a way that meets those assurances based on the legal counsel's recommendations. And that's really the explanation for why it has been proposed. And that's up to the board. The board will decide, whether we should move forward with that in terms of maybe opening up ourselves to risk or making the adjustments. At the end of the day, I know there's a lot of different sides on how it should be, whether it should be enumerated, whether all, every, all of those things. So I get it. And I do feel at least confident that the way that the language is structured, that we're going to protect all kids, where we are not going to discriminate, bully any of our students, or tolerate that in any way. We have very sound mechanisms to track that, to investigate that. And all of that is, I believe, the implementation of how we do that is very solid. And our educators are equipped to handle that and deal with it. And so, however, the outcome of the document and the language is, I'm very confident that we're going to be able to continue to make Sarasota's learning environment the safest it can be for all students.
Thank you. So we have quite a few questions in the chat.
Yeah, there are. And I was just trying to, since we don't have that much time left, I was just trying to go through them real quickly and see if there are any that aren't as repetitive. Christina Haley wanted to know, are you putting a freeze on any planned building projects? I guess you've already answered that. But are there any other building projects that are being reconsidered?
Well, our capital fund is primarily the way that when we look at building projects or facility renovations is a separate bucket than the general fund. So we just have to make sure everyone understands two different buckets and their way that you spend those dollars. So yes, the short answer is yes, we are readjusting. We just passed our 5-year capital plan. And when you look at, obviously, debt service is a big part of when you build multi-million-dollar schools, and you're talking about Sky Ranch and Welland Park, and we had to take out debt service, then you got to obviously pay that back. And that comes out of your capital fund. Well, when you have debt service, that means you have less available cash to build to do other things, right? And so, yes, we had to prioritize, but our 5-year plan is really good at projecting the needs of our schools. We do what's called a facility assessment for all of our facilities across the district. And then we prioritize what projects need to happen quickly first, and then what things can wait out a year, 2 years, 3 years. And so we've got some great things planned. We can't do everything all at one time. Obviously, you only get so much of the capital funding a year, because remember, part of your taxes, your tax, property tax, is 1.5 mil of that is to the capital fund. And so we get that every year on an annual basis. So we are happy to say, though, we had enough cash on hand so that we don't have to take out debt service. We broke ground on a new Garden Elementary School, and we're going to be able to pay for that whole brand new elementary school in cash. And that school should be up and running in about 2 years. But other projects have had to been prioritized, either pushed back or delayed, based on the fact that, we're required to give charter schools now more money out of our capital than we've been required to in the past. So we've had to make provisions to budget for that as well.
Amy Welsh is wondering how our kindergarten enrollment is. Is it trending up or down? And she also wanted to know how many schools are considered to be under-enrolled.
That's a great question. We just had this conversation currently in our cabinet meeting this week. We were looking at what is registered in the system right now. Kindergarten is a little bit of a concern for me, but it is a shot in the dark, because we may get them registered right up to the start of school and even after school starts. So, but I do think the way the trends look, the kindergarten rates don't look like they're nearly as high as we had projected them to be. So I'm concerned about kindergarten and what that looks like. Here's the reality: birth rates, not just in Florida, everywhere, are going down. And here's the thing we got to remember: let's just say we have 100, 200, 300 kids less every year, coming into our schools because birth rates are declining. Think about that over the course from kindergarten, and then the next year, the next group's 300 less or 100 less. And then year after year, within 5 years, you're having some pretty significant drops in enrollment, and that's just due to birth rate. So yes, that is a concern for us, but we're looking at overall enrollments, what's in the system. Honestly, we're right about where we were last year, but I didn't have the differentiation between charter and traditional. So I can't give you that data off the top of my head. Overall, we were roughly the same, but we could be up, say, in traditional and not as much in charter, or vice versa. We're going to tease that data out as we get closer. And those are, again, are all projections. When the 5-day count happens, that's the one that we use to really make our decisions about, where teachers may need to move or staff needs to move based on actual enrollment.
All right. Do you want me to ask another one, Jill?
I have a question.
Sure.
Have you heard from any private school companies that they're interested in opening a school in Sarasota? We have so many. I'm just wondering if there are any more, or charter schools. Are you anticipating any more of those to open? Have you heard?
So, not to our knowledge, we have not received a charter school application as of yet. Here's the thing now with the new law, it'll be interesting. I don't know if when they submit it, we have 90 days to act. It's a very quick turnaround. And now I honestly, until we go through the process, there's now a DOE state process that can approve charter schools. Haven't been through that yet, so that'll be an interesting process to see if that does occur. But nothing as of right now. You do remember we approved the classical charter. I think they're still moving forward. I'm not sure where they're at in the process, but we should begin to see that school opening up in the next couple of years. And honestly, we've got to think competitively around that option. So I think our community needs to think about, if this is the choice that parents want, and they're gonna pull 1,000 kids out of our traditional public schools. I think it's incumbent upon all of us to think maybe we could do it and do it better.
Mm.
So that's the kind of competition and innovative thinking we're going to need as a community to galvanize. If you can't beat them, join them, right? So we can beat them, we can do the job better. And I think we gotta think outside of the box around this, or we're going to continue to bleed enrollment if we think we're just going to do the same thing, and they're going to come to us. And so, um, I've even had some conversations around what do we need to do around this concept. If this is the type of program the community wants, can we do it better and keep those students with us? And we need to think hard about that. In private schools, I'm sorry, Dr. Lewis Spector, it's I have not had any conversations about any private schools, so I wouldn't know if they're going to pop up or not. They don't really engage with us on that piece.
Have you been involved with the micro school movement? Are we taking students in for special courses or anything like that?
We are now officially a vendor of Step Up, because again, like I said, we can't just let it happen to us and just not do anything. So now Sarasota County Schools is officially a vendor. That's hot off the press, by the way. I haven't even been able to tell my board, so my board members on here are now learning that as well.
But thanks for
We
letting us know.
we just got approved for that. And so now that gives us the options now to start thinking about, can we offer homeschool students some pathways, some courses that they can't get otherwise in our schools, and actually charge them for that. And that's a way to recoup some of those step up dollars that we're losing. So we are exploring that, and we're actively moving forward with that.
Yeah, I would think some of the technology, courses and some of the lab sciences would be, perfect for homeschooled students. They can't get that at home.
Right.
It's just a minute before 7. We have just one question for you. Maybe you can take a minute to answer, which is, what can we do? The League of Women Voters is very, very involved with education, as you know. And we have people on the call tonight who are not members of the League, but who are very concerned about public education. They don't want it dismantled. What can we do? What do you see us as being able to contribute?
You've done a good job. I know at least many of you, and I see some faces here that you've been at our school board and just advocating for public education, making sure that we're communicating what we need as a school district to remain competitive. We need to just have a level playing field. We're not afraid of competition. We think we can do our job and we do it better than most, but we can't continue to have a death by a thousand cuts. We need a level playing field with that. So whatever the rules should apply to all. It shouldn't be at the detriment of our finances because we're trying to expand. Maybe it's the FES scholarship program, whatever it is. We just need our voices out there to say, don't create initiatives at the detriment of public education. Create a level playing field to allow us to compete. Take away, I am a very huge advocate of the deregulation that's occurred over the last few years. There's still more that needs to be done, a lot more. But I do applaud the legislature for moving forward with that because we have so many strings or hoops we have to jump through that say charters don't or private schools don't. And that was an attempt to start to leveling the playing field. We need to continue that push.
Hey, well, thank you so much for spending this hour with us. We really appreciate that you've taken the time out. I guess you'll be going back and looking at the numbers some more, but we know that the district is in good hands with you as the leader. So thank you very, very much. And thank you everybody for attending this evening.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, ladies. Appreciate the chance to attend. Thank you.